Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting of the Commissioner Student Advisory Council. My name is Glyptis Ann Grider-Jones, and I am an information officer here at the Kentucky Department of Education. And it is my honor to welcome and introduce you to Interim Commissioner of Education, Robin Fields Kinney, to today's meeting. This is her first Student Advisory Council meeting since being appointed Interim Commissioner last month. Interim Commissioner Kinney has served as an Associate Commissioner in KDE's Office of Finance and Operations. Her prior work experience also includes legal practice in Kentucky and Florida and public service as General Counsel of the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development and as Deputy Secretary of the Kentucky Finance and Administration Cabinet. So welcome this morning, and Interim Commissioner Kinney, if you'd like to just share a few brief remarks and an overview of today's meeting, please.
Thank you very much, Glyptis Ann. It's a pleasure to be here with each of you. I'm excited about joining your meeting today. I have popped into various meetings of your council over the last couple of years. I am extremely proud of Kentucky in having the Commissioner Student Advisory Council to have student voice present in all of our discussions, and also that we have a student member on the Kentucky Board of Education. So thank you to each of you for serving in this capacity, and also to RJ for being our member on the Kentucky Board of Education. I look forward to hearing and learning from you all today and about your council project, which is part of your agenda. We are going to have a Mindful Minute activity from Dr. Michelle Searcy. And we're also going to have Dr. Meredith Brewer with us, and Meredith has been with you in the past working on projects before, so that will be a familiar face for you. And she's going to talk to us about the goals and priorities of the Kentucky Board of Education for the 2024 session of the General Assembly, which is upcoming. So I look forward to participating with you in today's meeting, and I'll turn it back to Glyptis Ann for roll call.
All right, thank you. And during today's roll call, Interim Commissioner Kinney has invited all of us to share a bucket list item that you would like to achieve within the next year. So when I call your name, please feel free to say present, and then also share just a brief bucket list item that you would like to accomplish over this first year. I'll throw in just quickly, I think one bucket list item I would like to achieve over this next year, and maybe 2 years, is that I'd like to visit every county in our Commonwealth. I've not had the opportunity to hit every county, and that's a bucket list item I have for myself. So again, as I call your name for roll, please say present and then share with us just a brief bucket list item. So I will begin. Ava Benson.
Present, and a bucket list item for me is to go to Washington, D.C., but actually see the White House. I went last summer and was unable to see any of the famous landmarks.
Reese Blakeman is sent a note. He's not here today. Owen Borden.
I'm present, and I think a bucket list item for me would be to reach fluency in the Japanese language in this upcoming year.
Cool, great. Cameron Breyer.
I'm here. Something on my bucket list is to visit every 50 states.
Thank you. Owen Graham Cody.
Present. An item on my bucket list is to attend an Ivy League college within the next year.
Thank you. Hunter Combs. Is Hunter present? All right, thank you. Jude Dela.
Present, and my bucket list item is probably to visit a new country this year.
Justin Dunning. Brima Dutt.
I'm here, and my bucket list item is probably to go to all the national parks.
Thank you. Manas Garla.
I'm here, and my bucket list item is probably to visit all the continents in my lifetime.
Thank you. Nicholas Hazlett.
Present. My bucket list item probably would be to get a perfect 5 on my AP Gov exam this year.
Great goals. Everyone has great bucket list items. Annette Irakiza.
Present, and my bucket list item this next year will probably be to visit Duke.
Glyptis Ann, are you still with us? It appears that Glyptis Ann is having a little bit of technical difficulties. Let's wait for just a minute and we'll see if she can get back on with us and continue our roll call. I know that we've already had one member indicate that they'd like to visit Duke. And I apologize, I don't know the name of the other gentleman online that's wearing the Duke sweatshirt. So just so that we have a little parity here, I have my Kentucky hat close by at all times so that we make sure that we give equal billing to Kentucky as well as to Duke. So I'll just kind of keep this on so we make sure, keep that in mind. We certainly hope that all of our students, even if you go abroad to other great places, that we certainly come back to Kentucky so that we have the benefit of your talents here in the Commonwealth. So it looks like Glyptis Ann may be having a little bit of problems. So we'll come back and finish roll call after we can get Glyptis Ann back online with us. Let's go ahead and continue today's meeting. And I'll jump into the area where I'll let you know a little bit about myself. And then we'll have a little bit of a conversation that I hope with you. So I will take my hat off because it casts a big shadow on me. But my name is Robin Kinney, and I was going to tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to be in the interim position. As Glyptis Ann shared with you, I worked here as Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations. For about 8 years, I have been in that position, and I've had other areas of public service throughout the Commonwealth. In my role, I read with a lot of interest the project work that this council did last year on school safety and security. And the reason for that is because in my former position, I had the area of facilities. So working with all of your local school districts on facility needs that you had across the Commonwealth. So I read that with great interest, thought it was excellent work by your group. And hope that we can move forward with a lot of the recommendations. The other area that, of course, I oversee is the budget of K-12 education. So a lot of the funding that comes to local school districts from the state flows through the office that I was also in, had oversight. So, but now I'm in an interim commissioner position, and I thought we could talk for just a few minutes about what that means and see if you have any advice to me as an interim commissioner. What I kind of was thinking about is if you were asked to fill as an interim principal at your school, what would that feel like? What would it look like? And that's sort of how I am proceeding at this point in time. I'm learning a lot, but I'm also hearing a lot of good recommendations from people on things that should change. So if you were interim principal for the day, or for, let's say, for the rest of the school year, what advice would you need to be successful in your role? And I'm going to open the chat. If you could just, in the chat, I'm going to try to toggle back to that to see if I can see it. Okay. So if you were named interim principal for the rest of the school year, what actions would you take? And more importantly, what actions would you not take? I'm opening up the chat for anyone to give your advice if you were principal for a whole school year. Anyone? Okay, I'm starting to see learning what the past principal did right and wrong, and make sure more students have voice in what we do. I think those are excellent, excellent things. I would engage with my students and staff more often. Great advice. Making an effort to get to know the students and staff. Listen to the teachers and students. The first thing I would need is to get an idea of the biggest problem in the school and try to fix it efficiently. Spreading awareness about issues students are passionate about and listen to feedback. Form personal and genuine connections with students. These are all great, great ideas, very thoughtful. If I were to serve as interim principal, I would ensure student voice is recognized and appreciated when decision making is made. Feedback, take as much help as you can from students and teachers, creating an inclusive environment, propagating respect for the rules and for each other, and feedback from parents to see what they want for their students. Great, great advice. Bridge the gap between the views of students, teachers, and administrators. Making sure discipline actions are equal for all students, not come down with an iron fist on the staff because they are backbone of the school. I'm beginning to think I could just turn over the interim commissioner position to any of you because it's exactly what is needed. You can't make, those knee-jerk reactions. I love that you all have chimed in to say, listen to the staff and the students. Here at the Department of Education, it's very similar to that. I need to listen to the staff here. They are the experts in their field and the professionals that I will have to rely upon. I think we always get a better result when we try to make a decision collaboratively. Although we all know that if you are the head of an agency or the head of your school, there are some decisions that you're going to have to make independently. But the more that you can listen, be inclusive and open and allow input from others, I think you always have a better successful ending. I'm still seeing lots in the chat. Focus on what people from across the state felt were areas of excellence, but also where we could improve. Improving communication, create an inclusive and open relationship on teachers, staff, and students, the main stakeholders. Excellent, excellent advice. Listen to underrepresented staff like cafeteria workers and janitors because they are the backbone of our schools. Absolutely. Each of the staff in your local school districts is important to the overall success of students. Whether it is your cafeteria workers, your bus drivers, your janitorial staff, they all contribute toward the success of having your school buildings in the best shape possible, providing meals, transporting to and from. All those things are really important in order for you all to be in the best place you can to receive that instruction from your teachers and other staff. So you've all given great advice. I've taken sort of the comments that you've provided and tried to think of them in the context of me in an interim position as the Commissioner of Education. Someone else has put, honestly, creating a plan to keep the school clean would be one of my first priorities. So it sounds like Seth is basically saying to us, it's much easier to be successful in a clean environment where you feel very safe and welcomed into that school. So I appreciate your candid response there, Seth. We all want a clean learning environment. Absolutely. So as I think of the advice that you've given from the perspective of being the interim principal, I see lots of really good advice to me as my actions as the interim commissioner. As you all know, or probably know, an interim, by their very nature of the position, is a short-time position. So really it is to help provide continuity until the next commissioner is named here. So that is my goal. It is to provide continuity, assurance to our staff that all will be okay, and we will keep on with the very important work that is already underway to support the Kentucky Board of Education's initiatives for United We Learn and continue those important discussions on Portrait of a Learner. So all very important things that are going on. Also, I will have the privilege of being here for the next General Assembly session that will start in January. And of course, always important on education legislation that is being considered. And this will be the year of the biennial budget. So advocating for funds for your schools and your districts from the General Assembly and the state budget. So a lot of work on the plate for myself and the rest of the staff here at KDE during the interim period. Our hope is to have the next permanent Commissioner of Education in place by the beginning of next school year. So that would be our goal. And we will work toward that during the interim period. But I really appreciate all the good advice that you have given. Even though you've given it in the context of being your interim principal, these are all qualities and suggestions that will be very helpful for me as I perform my responsibilities as interim commissioner. I'm trying to look real quickly to see if Glyptis Ann is back on with us. Glyptis Ann, have you been able to join us?
I am back. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Right.
So
A little bit of, go ahead.
So I don't know how much that you missed, but we basically just went into conversations with me, and I got some great feedback from our students on how to act and perform as an interim. And I think now we're ready to finish our roll call before we go to the next item.
Thank you. I was able to hear and appreciated hearing about the qualities that all of our students have shared and hearing about the interim role. And I, again, apologize for those technical difficulties, but seems to be back in working order. So I will move back to roll call. On my side of things, the last person that I called roll for, I believe, was Onette Irakiza.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Thank you. And we'll continue Interim Commissioner Kinney's invitation to share our bucket list items. So if you'd like to share an item now too. Annette, did you want to share? Go ahead.
Okay. My bucket list item was to visit Duke University by the end of this year.
Thank you. Trey Jackson. Peter Jefferson sent a note. He is unable to join this morning. Shraman Carr.
Yeah, I'm here. And my bucket list item is to learn Spanish fluently this year.
Wonderful. Vijay Kumar Karthikeyan.
I'm here. My bucket list would probably be, I don't know, I'd like to visit some countries, probably the Maldives. I've been wanting to go there.
I'm hearing a lot of travel and language learning goals, which are both very exciting and ambitious goals. Seth Langford.
Here, I think my biggest bucket list item would be to work for the FBI.
Thank you. Danica Rose. Danica Love. Danica Rose Love. Thank you.
Here, my biggest bucket list goal in the next year would be to get good scholarships for college.
Gabriella McAdams. Constance Ray Martin sent a note. She's unable to join this morning. Anopa Mosoni.
Present, my biggest bucket list item this year is to gain proficiency in my national language of Shona in Zimbabwe.
Thank you. RJ Osborne. Tanvi Rakesh. I see in your Tanvi's shared in the chat that her bucket list item is to visit a new country. Thank you, Tanvi. Daniel Ratley.
Hey, I'm here, and my bucket list item is to visit the Great Lakes.
Thank you. Jocelyn Reddick.
I'm here, and my bucket list item is to graduate top 10 in my class.
Great goal. Caleb Robinson. Amy Roblero Perez.
Here, and my bucket list item would be to go to Mexico.
Great, thank you. Sophia Staples.
Hi, I'm here. I'm on VJ's computer, but my bucket list item would probably be to go to New York.
Ian Swinson. Mally Taylor. Sarah Umugger.
My bucket list item would probably be to visit every country.
Great goal. Austin Vidito.
Yeah, and I'd say win probably I'd say state in like our sport.
Thank you. Carly Watts.
Here, and my bucket list item would probably be to visit Hawaii.
Thank you. Bentley White sent a note he is unable to attend, and Alieta Yanez Medina also is unable to attend today. India Young.
I'm here, and I think my bucket list item for the next year is to become the next Kentucky State Beta Vice President.
Great, thank you. And lastly, Joshua Zizek.
Present, and my bucket list item would be to go bungee jumping.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call. I do want to make sure, again, because of the technical difficulty, did everyone say and share their bucket list item? If you did not, please feel free to chime in now. I don't want to overlook. And then I would lastly like to invite Interim Commissioner Kenny to perhaps share a bucket list item from you.
Thank you, Glyptis Ann. I actually have two bucket list items that I'd like to share. The first would be I would love to go zip lining. I've never been zip lining. I have a friend of mine who went with a friend of hers last weekend, and she said it was very exhilarating and a little scary, but mostly fun. So I would love to try zip lining in the next year. And then professionally, of course, my other bucket list item is to select the next great permanent commissioner for the Department of Education. So along with KDE staff, I hope that we accomplish that in the next year and put us on to a path of continuity here at the department and for our local school districts. So those are two of my bucket list items. I've also put something in the chat that it appears we have lots of language, travel, and preparations for post-secondary learning, wherever that takes you. I was one of those students too, that when I got out of school, and I was in school for a long time because I did both my undergraduate degree and then I went to law school. But as soon as I got out, I felt the itch to go explore. And so I think that it is wonderful that we have so many students that are looking forward to traveling and maybe going to college that is in a different place in Kentucky. However, I will share with you that at least my personal experience is once I ventured to another place, and I actually lived in Florida for a couple of years, I did realize that the grass is not always greener on the other side, and especially if it's not bluegrass. And so I, after just a couple of years, ended up coming back to Kentucky because there's no place like home. But wherever your home ends up being, we know that this group of students will be a great asset to their communities and wherever that they end up locating. So lots of wonderful answers from our students today. I really appreciate learning a little bit more about their interests.
I agree. I also agree there's no place like home. So there's no place like Kentucky. Thank you. That does conclude our roll call. And it was really nice to hear everyone share your bucket list items. I do also want to quickly introduce Dr. Woods Tucker is on the call. He is our deputy commissioner, and he will pop in and just say a brief hello to our student advisory group before we then move on to our approval of the minutes. So Dr. Woods Tucker, if you'd like to pop on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Good morning, Interim Commissioner Kinney, and a special good morning to the superstars on this call, our students. I get to do a lot of neat things as Deputy Commissioner and Chief Equity Officer. Several of you I've known now for 2 or 3 years, and this year I will begin the start, actually in about a week or two, I will begin the start of my 4th year in the Kentucky Department of Education. And among some of the neat things I get to do, I get most importantly to hang out with you all here on the Commissioners Student Advisory Council. I get to travel. In fact, I'm actually traveling right now. I'm not driving while I'm stationary right now. I get to meet various stakeholders, and I brag about the great things that are happening in Kentucky, those things that Commissioner Kinney just talked about. But the most important thing I get to brag about is the talent that we have here, because you all represent the most important aspect of public education. You represent the best of public education, and I'm always uplifted. I'm in my 36th year in public education, and I am as excited now as I have been in the last 10 or 15 years of my career. And it really, that excitement was really sparked when I came here and started working with the commissioner and with the communications department and with you all and the bright ideas that you all provide. So thank you. You'll see me quite often. Hopefully the next time we meet will be in person, and I won't be traveling to Louisville to the Muhammad Ali Center to brag about the great things that are happening here in Kentucky. Now, the bucket list. Now, what is my bucket list? I would say I would love to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. You're probably saying, this fellow has to be crazy. Why would he want to climb a volcano? Although it's a dormant volcano, but 20,000 feet, who would want to do that? But I think I want to do that. I think that will expand my horizons. It'll certainly increase my endurance, and I pray that it won't be the last mountain I get to climb, but I certainly would like to do that, and I'll keep you all posted within the next 2 or 3 years. That's my goal, is to climb it within the next 2 or 3 years. Well, I'm going to go ahead and hop off. Again, it's always a pleasure speaking with you all and seeing you all. And do me a favor, thank your wonderful parents, your teachers, school administrators, and your community for giving us the absolute best students in the entire country.
Thank you, Dr. Woods Tucker. All right, we're now going to transition over and review your summary minutes. This is a procedural item, but you all have been provided with the summary notes from our September 26th council meeting. And so now I will entertain a motion. I'll just need someone to say that they make a motion to approve the summary notes that you were provided. I will share those on the screen momentarily, but again, I'm going to call for a motion to approve those summary notes, please.
I'll make the motion.
And could you just say your name? I believe Nicholas, but just want to verify.
Yes, Nicholas Hazlett.
Thank you, Nicholas, for the motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
And could you say your name, please?
Owen Cody.
Thank you, Owen. So we now have a motion. So all those members in favor, we'll just do a voice vote to approve those minutes. So just say yes if you approve, or you can write in the chat if you're not able to unmute.
Yes.
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 All right, thank you. Do I have any opposed or abstentions? And hearing none, the motion carries. So we've voted to approve our summary notes. So thank you for that. And then we will now move over to our next agenda item, which is to welcome Dr. Michelle Searcy to lead us in a mindful minute activity. Dr. Searcy, I'm going to share the screen just momentarily. So if you'd like to just pop on and say welcome, I will get the slide deck uploaded.
Yes, wonderful. Good morning, everyone. It is really good to see you today. The last time that we talked, it was my third day on the job, and I could not think of a better way to start off my time here at Katie Eden. It's by far my favorite thing to do. I want to join in on the bucket list item because doesn't want to talk about their bucket list item. So I have one personal and one professional. So my personal one, I heard someone else say, I would love to travel to Hawaii. My mom and I have talked about going together since I was about 7 or 8 years old. We've never been able to do that. And she is in her 70s now. So I would love to be able to do that trip with my mom. And then my professional bucket list item is I want to develop a strong collaborative working relationship with all of our educational co-ops. And a lot of that is exactly what you guys talked about getting feedback and hearing the voices of the people throughout the state and what they need in terms of support and resources from us here at the Kentucky Department of Education. I was so glad that you guys got to hear from Dr. Woods Tucker this morning. I also want to bring greetings from our Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, Dr. Damian Sweeney. He is also on the call, and you guys are familiar with Dr. Sweeney. He's been able to work with you all for several years, so he is on the call with us as well. As I was looking through all of the suggestions that you had for our interim commissioner, Kenny, I could not help but notice that a lot of the things you all's recommended centered around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So I jotted a few of them down that stood out to me. You talked about having an inclusive environment at your school. You talked about making sure that we put a focus on student, teacher, and family voice. And you also talked about making sure that we have an intentional purpose around getting the voice and experiences of underrepresented populations. And that is the work of DEIB. And I am so excited to see that you guys have those same things in mind and that you find that valuable too. So we're going to start in with our Mindful Minute activity. If you can go on to the first slide. Okay, welcome back. I know this time we are virtual, and that does put a little bit of a different feeling when we meet as a group. But I'm going to do a quick recap of what we talked about last time. So last time we talked about things that stressed you out. And there are a lot of things that cause stress for our students, and you gave us some great feedback. We went through some progressive muscle relaxation for you to be able to feel what your muscles feel like when they're tense, and then slowly how to relax those. And then we also talked about suicide prevention and what that you found worked really well for you and your peers and what was not so helpful. And the other thing we talked about that I don't have on here is your concern for the mental health of your teachers and administrators in the building. To hear you all voice that on your own, to say, hey, we're worried about the mental health of our classmates, sure, but we are equally as concerned about the mental health of our educators because that impacts us as students, and we're worried about them. And I've been able to speak to quite a few co-ops, and that's something that I bring up, that this is a concern of the students in our state. and that it's something that we really need to focus on. So since we've talked last month, go on and drop in the chat, and you can even use an emoji there. How is your stress level now? Are you feeling any better about the school year? Has your stress level increased? Has it kind of mellowed out for a little bit? You can, like I said, do an emoji, or you can drop a message there in the chat. And then also, how about your peers? How are your peers doing right now? I will do one for myself. I am doing fantastic. Seth, you're a little cold, it looks like. Love it.
My
India,
chat,
Danielle.
I turned off for some reason.
That's okay. If you want to you can say it here. You don't have to put it in the chat. Feel free to unmute.
I would say mine's good. I don't know about the school, but I would say that mine is good. I know some people's isn't as good, but I feel like that also goes with like the workloads and stuff. So that's just where we're at.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It looks like from the chat box, you guys are doing a little better than you was the last time. Maybe that fall break helped and you were able to step away a little bit and recenter. Other people are still a little hectic. So what we're going to do, if you can go on to the next slide. What about our, before we do that, adults in the room on the chat, can you tell us how you're doing? If we're going to get our input from our students, I want to get the input from the staff too. Adults on the call today, can you drop in that chat box how you're doing with your stress level? I see Dr. Sweeney has posted in there his. Yeah, Commissioner Kinney, I appreciate that honesty. And I would agree with that. Like, your peers here at KDE are a little anxious. There's a lot of unknowns in front of us, and we experience that anxiety of the unknown well throughout our lifespan. And so it's important to acknowledge that. And I agree, Dr. Sweeney, the voice of our colleagues matters too. And that's what we heard from our students just a second ago. Like, we need to make sure we get the voice of the educators and the adults as well as the students. So let's talk about a few positive coping strategies for stress. Oftentimes when we get stressed, naturally, we run to coping strategies that maybe are not so positive. So some people, they get caught up in scrolling on social media. They may just kind of lounge on the couch for days on end. Some people like to overeat. I may or may not participate in that negative coping strategy. There's lots of things that we can do negative, but there are tons of things that we can do that are positive coping strategies too. So I just listed here a few of them. Any type of physical activity is good for our mental health. Getting outside and doing that physical activity is even better. Our body needs sunshine. It instantly boosts your mood and helps you to deal with different stress that's in your life. Talking to a trusted friend, listening to music, practicing yoga. Are there any positive coping strategies that you guys think I missed on this list? What are some positive things that you or your peers do to help you cope with stress that's positive? And again, you can drop that in the chat. KDE employees, you can drop it in the chat too, or you can unmute your mic.
I find that the best thing I can do for myself when I'm in a negative space is to make something with my hands, to build something, because it's always good to feel like you've made a positive impact.
I love that. Being creative with our bodies is fantastic. So when you make something, when you are creating something, it helps you feel like you're making a positive impact. I love that suggestion. Thank you so much. Listening to music, reading a book, binging a series. Oh, participating in or being a fan of a sporting event. Y'all, I have a deep love for football. Deep love for football. So my self-care strategy, on Sunday, after I go to church, I come home and I watch football all day. And I get a lot of energy out, as my husband would tell you, as I'm yelling at the screen sometimes. Making and accomplishing goals on my list. Yes, Cliff was saying, checking those off as you're completing them. Taking a walk, getting some extra sleep. Our body needs sleep. Teenagers need more sleep than any other time in your life. So that sleep is important. All right, can we go on to the next slide? Thank you all for giving all of those positive coping strategies. So I'm going to show you a short video here in just a second. But what is something that you all want your teachers and administrators to know specifically about teen stress? And what is something you want your family to know? And what is something that you want your friends to know? So you can pick any of those, drop them in the chat. You all are the experts on teen stress. So let us know, what is it that you want your teachers, administrators, families, or even your peers to know about the stress that they are feeling? Again, you can put that in the chat or unmute.
Hey, it's Nicholas. I would just input on administrators and teachers, the stress that they feel. I think a lot of the times when you do have that administrator-student, teacher-student relationship, when you're being honest with each other, when you're, going through the day and seeing how really we all can work and build on each other, that really can reduce their stress, because they're thinking that if you handle school one way, if you handle curriculum one way, that it's going to work for everybody. And then many times students are like, no, that's not really beneficial. And, you have to have that working relationship that will not only help us as students, but build off of them and make sure that they're not working around the clock with really no secondhand knowledge of really what we need as students. As peers, I think to let them know that they're not alone. I think that's a lot of the case, where you're in that mindset where you think that it's only me. I'm the only one facing this issue. Well, if you really go around the room, I think you could realize that it may not be the exact problem, but everybody's going through something. And I think that should be recognized, because it doesn't just take the burden off of you, but it lets you know that you can be vulnerable, you can talk to people, because you are not just the one. You all in that number that really just needs to talk it out, get through that day. And I think really building those relationships is key.
Nicholas, I appreciate that so much. So I heard you say that, hey, educators, you don't have to go through stress by yourself. We can help each other. By you getting input from students, that can decrease your stress, because you're going to be able to create more efficient plans that reach our needs as a student body without spinning your wheels. But then also to let people know you're not in this alone. Like, life gets hard sometimes, and you don't have to go through it all by yourself. All right, let me check over here on the chat. Something I'd like them to know is that students often get little sleep, so they need to slow down when they explain things. Encouragement to take care of ourselves, noticing little red flags, all the details of a student are important. That is so well said, Seth. I feel that many believe that there is maximum amount of stress a person can experience, but stress is a feeling that builds on top constantly. With this outlook, maybe teachers and administrators can be cognizant of the expectation and requirements placed on students. Yeah, so stress isn't a one-time thing. It can compound. So sometimes we want to look at stress as this linear approach, but it's not. It can be building blocks, where the more stress we have, the bigger our wall gets, for lack of a better word. So that stress compounds and ends up having a much larger impact if we don't notice those red flags and take some positive steps to take care of our stress. All right, I'm going to read through all of those here in just a little bit. But last time, y'all, I went over my time, so I got to make sure I don't do that today. So I want to show you this quick video that I love it. It talks about how do we talk to our friends about stress? How do we let people know that we're there for them? So if we can go on and watch this short video on friendship and mental health.
Thank you, Dr. Searcy. This time, Interim Commissioner, this is where Interim Commissioner Kenny was slated to guide us in a conversation, and she has already presented. We are waiting for Dr. Meredith Brewer to arrive. And so when she comes back into the conversation, when she joins our call, we will switch over to her to guide us in a conversation about the legislative priorities. So at this time, I am going to move ahead to the agenda item on our listed as our council project activity. And I see the comments in the chat saying thank you to Dr. Searcy. I think our students have always expressed appreciation for our Mindful Minute activity. So at this time, if Rima, if you're available to pop on the call, Rima and I will help facilitate conversations and to breakout activities this morning as it relates to our Student Advisory Council project. To catch you all up to speed, the last meeting, you all worked with and identified sort of a direction on where you would like to move forward with your Student Advisory Council project as it relates to student voice. And Rima and Bentley, our chair and vice chair of the council, spoke about sort of an effort to go out and engage stakeholders across the state. And so at this time, we are going to randomly sort you all into two different groups. This is just a random assignment. And Rima, I will pause. I see Dr. Meredith Brewer is here. We will pause our conversation about our breakout activity relating to student voice because we do want to make sure Dr. Meredith Brewer has the opportunity to walk. So when you're ready, Dr. Brewer, I will queue up your slides.
Thank you, Glyptosan. I'm ready. I apologize. It's just a very packed day here at KDE. So I was double booked this morning, but very happy to be with you all. So if you can pull up those slides, we'll jump right in. As I said, really happy to be here. It's certainly the highlight of all of our weeks when we get to meet with students. As you are all very aware, we are getting ready for the 2024 legislative session, which will start in January. The way that the General Assembly functions every other year is a budget session. So we are coming into a budget session, which means the budget will definitely be the focus of a lot of conversations. It's very important that the General Assembly pass a functional budget because it will sort of dictate the work of the state for the next 2 years. So it is a very important conversation and is something that we are very mindful of here at KDE. But we do have some other priorities that we are advocating for in the area of education that we'll talk about today, in addition to budget requests. So if we can move on to the next slide. So in addition to just our general operating budget, which we always submit to the General Assembly, and that's sort of the things to keep the lights on and make sure that we have our kind of required services that we need to provide funded. We also have something called additional budget requests that we can submit. And these are items that are identified as either important policy initiatives, projects that we feel like are important to prioritize. And those additional budget requests are brought before the board. Each office at the department is asked to sort of identify what those budget requests might entail. And then the board has a chance to review those budget requests and prioritize them, rank them, so that when the budget is sent over, the representatives in the budget office know kind of where we are emphasizing our greatest need. So throughout actually this past year, the board has been hearing these different budget requests, and in August, they passed their list with their rank order. And so, of course, we will be advocating for funding of these additional budget requests. And these are listed on the screen, but they include sort of an increase in SEEK base. SEEK is that Support Excellence in Kentucky budget allocation that is on a per pupil basis, sort of allocated to schools. And that's the bulk of the funding that schools receive to function every day. And we would like to see an 8% increase in that per pupil base, really to deal with inflationary costs. We know, and I'm sure you have heard a lot in the news, inflation is pretty intense right now. And so what cost a certain dollar amount a year ago, there's a pretty significant increase in that charge. If any of you drive, you have seen that at the gas pump. And certainly if you've been to the grocery store recently, you have seen that increase, and same is true in education spending. So we want to see an increase in that SEEK base, as well as an increase in the transportation funds that our school districts receive. I'm sure you are all aware that we have a really high need for bus drivers in the state right now, because it is critical that we get students to school. And so in addition to needing more bus drivers, we also want to have the funds available to our districts to cover the cost of all of those transportation related expenses. As I said, gas is very expensive, as well as maintenance of buses and the other associated costs with transporting kids to and from school each day. The board has historically advocated for universal preschool. We know how important it is to have high quality early childhood experiences. We want to have our students entering into kindergarten as prepared as possible. And there is a really strong evidence base that having a high quality preschool experience sets you up for the greatest success in school. So the board prioritized funding for at-risk 3-year-olds. So those will be students who have identified learning disabilities and or a financial need, as well as all 4-year-olds to be able to attend a state-funded preschool program. The board also really emphasized the importance of supports for our educator workforce. So that's additional funds to support recruitment and retention of our educators. So that would be funding for Go Teach KY, which is our statewide teacher recruitment campaign, Educators Rising, which is our student organization where you can compete. If you're interested in being a future teacher, I encourage you to look into Educators Rising in your district, as well as supports for new teacher induction, as well as new principal induction, so that we can get our new teachers and new principals off to the best start possible. We also are asking for additional support for Kentucky Educational Recovery Fund. That's what we're calling this particular request. And that is to support our schools and districts that have been identified as TSI, and that's Targeted Support and Improvement. And that is a designation that comes as part of a review of the prior assessment cycle. And those are schools that our Office of Continuous Improvement and Support provide extended services to help them address any concerns that have been identified and really move forward in the best way possible, and hopefully move out of that designation status. We also need funding for our Kentucky Education Technology System, or KETS. And you may not be aware, and Glyptis-Ann, we may want to have Associate Commissioner Couch speak to the group at some point, but Kentucky is really known across the country as having one of the best education technology systems. We have a long history of really leading the way in how our schools are connected through having internet access, having one-to-one devices, but that is a very complex system to maintain, and we do need additional funding to make sure that that infrastructure is up to date and the most effective. We also, the board prioritized additional funding for Read to Succeed implementation, in particular, additional literacy coaches and additional professional learning for our educators in high quality literacy practices. So those were the additional budget requests. So of course we will be advocating for these and hope that the General Assembly provides some additional dollars within the budget for these items. Does anyone have any questions on the budget requests? All right, next slide, please. We do want to take a moment and celebrate that in recent sessions, the General Assembly has really emphasized their support for career and technical education, and we are so appreciative of that support. Many of you are probably familiar with or participate in CTE programs in your schools, and you know how amazing it is to have a chance to sort of learn about a future career path, have those hands-on experiences, and really have kind of a peek into what your future career could look like. Part of what we would like to see is sort of a revision of the distribution formula for the funding to ensure that every CTE program is equitably funded so that all of our school districts have the chance to have the most impactful CTE programs possible. Next slide. So I know that I've spoken about this before, and you all are aware that the Kentucky Board of Education serves as the local school board for the Kentucky School for the Blind and the Kentucky School for the Deaf. And so it is always a priority for the board to advocate for our state schools, which also includes that very complex system of area technology centers. But specifically, the board wanted to emphasize a need for funding for KSB and KSD generally, just to maintain the services that we provide for those students, and just wanted to make sure that they continue to highlight those residential schools. So it's a very unique sort of experience where the students live on campus. There are services provided for students that do not choose to live on campus, but for the most part, those are residential programs. And so there's obviously additional costs associated with that. But we just wanted to make sure that the General Assembly was aware of the amazing programs that we have taking place at KSB and KSD. Next slide, please. There we go. So in the most recent budget, there was some additional funding for advanced placement. I'm sure many of you are currently enrolled in AP courses. So there was some funding to provide opportunities to provide funding for AP tests so that they could be, the cost of those assessments could be covered using state funds. What we are advocating for is some flexibility for those dollars. So if those dollars are not expended as part of test reimbursement, that those funds could be used for support services for students to prepare for the assessment or for professional development for the teachers that are teaching those AP courses. So just some flexibility for those dollars that have already been allocated. Next slide. And this is an item, so statutory cleanup, you know, there are a lot of laws in the state, and our school districts have a lot of requirements upon them, and we have a lot of requirements at the department as far as reports we need to provide, different expectations, and some of those have become somewhat outdated or their utility has sort of passed. So we want to be sure that we are reviewing all of the statutes that are on the books right now and advocating for anything that could be removed to help streamline some of the processes that are taking place at our school and remove some of our schools and districts and remove some of the administrative burden. So this is something we always advocate for, cleaning up any statutes that may need to be reviewed for effectiveness. Next slide. So we have the expert on the call with us. Interim Commissioner Kinney could speak to this far better than I can, but there's been an interest in the past few years from our districts to have a little bit more flexibility in how they go about getting approval for construction projects and facility management. So in the past, districts needed to bring forward to the board requests for any waivers if they needed to have something, came up in a construction project, and in regulation, it required a certain square footage or a certain set of different facility requirements. They would need to submit to have a waiver if they were not able to satisfy that. And in sort of reviewing the way that that facility process was set up, the department, as well as the General Assembly, identified some areas where there could be some flexibilities. And so there was a pilot project that was done through House Bill 678 in 2022 session that sort of piloted those flexibilities to see if districts could proceed with some of those facility decisions on a local basis with general oversight from the department rather than having more direct involvement of the department. And for the most part, it's been a really successful experiment. And so we are advocating that those flexibilities be codified and that it become a permanent flexibility that districts have. We also want to amend the statute that is listed on the screen, 162060, to provide districts with final design plan approval. Back to inflation, unfortunately, that seems to be where we end up a lot these days. The speed at which districts can move in facility decision making is really important from a budgetary perspective, because having to wait through the process of bringing to their local school board and then to the board for approval can delay the process, and that can actually cost quite a lot of money. So we are very supportive of maintaining health and safety. That is a #1 priority. We want to make sure our schools are safe for our students, but feel that there are flexibilities that districts can have to help expedite that process. All right, last slide, please. All right, so there's one additional exciting legislative request that we are making that the board actually did not have a chance to entertain as part of their formal list, because this one sort of came up most recently, but we were very excited to respond to this. But there's some interest to explore paying for student teaching. So I'm sure you all have had a student teacher in your school at some point, and we know that part of the pre-service educator experience in Kentucky, our students spend a lot of time in the school setting. So they have practicum hours where they are in schools learning about being a teacher, observing, but they sort of conclude that long experience of on-site learning with their formal student teaching. And that is a 70-day requirement, typically the last semester of their educator prep program. And they are there the whole day. And as I said, you probably have had a student teacher that for a portion of the time was your kind of primary teacher, and your assigned teacher was in the back observing, mentoring, and your student teacher was leading the classroom that day. So we know that is equivalent to a full-time job for those 70 days that those student teachers are teaching. And it can be burdensome for our student teachers to not be able to work their part-time jobs during that time. So they are obviously enrolled in their senior year. However, they have additional expenses, and without any compensation, that can be a burden, as I said. So we are advocating that student teachers receive a stipend. And the way we calculated it was based on a 7.5-hour workday for those 70 hours at $15 an hour, which is a pretty standard rate. You probably have seen some local restaurants in your area advertising for workers at $15 an hour. So we wanted to appropriately capture that kind of hourly wage. They're not the teacher of record, so we're not calculating it based on a teacher salary base, but it is a fair recommendation for an hourly pay. So we've calculated that out. It would be about $8,000 for those 70 days. And hopefully that will make the student teaching experience really what it's supposed to be. Focus on them really learning and being mentored, and not feeling anxious about any bills or expenses incurred during that time. So we are excited about this proposal and hope that it is well received by the General Assembly when they come back into session in January. So that concludes sort of our legislative priorities. Happy to entertain any questions you may have.
I had two questions on two different items.
Okay.
When you had mentioned the education workforce support portion to like Go Teach Kentucky and the Educators Rising program, would any of that new allocated funding, if of course allowed by the General Assembly, would that be to help expand it to other schools that currently don't have it, or would it just help fund schools that currently have the program?
Yes, we are hoping to expand. That is the hope. You've hit on my favorite topic of all time. I could talk about Go Teach KY for hours and hours, but yes, we have, as part of Go Teach KY, the Teacher Ambassador program, because we know that teachers are the best recruiters for future teachers, for their colleagues. And so as part of our ambassador program, we have amazing teachers across the state who are serving in that role. But we'd love to expand the program. They get a very small stipend that really doesn't really compensate for all the time that they put in, but they really are passionate about their profession. But yes, we want to expand that, and we definitely want to expand the Educators Rising program, as well as our Teaching and Learning Pathway, which is the career and technical program that is affiliated with Educators Rising. So yes, expansion would be the hope.
Yes, I would just say to that note, one of my teachers, Miss Charlene Moulton, she's an English teacher here at Paintsville, she just started a MSU dual credit class, an introduction to education class. Unfortunately, my schedule didn't allow for it, but I'm glad that she was able to have it. So I believe she is hoping to get Educators Rising pretty soon to all districts. So potentially that could maybe, boost up her chances or confidence in it, if the money would be allocated there. Also for the AP funding, would that also take effect to like expand certain AP courses to other districts, or would that just be helping kind of on the same track of what I'd mentioned about Go Teach Kentucky, just for districts that currently have those certain courses or certain pathways?
So it's still a district decision as to what courses they offer, and a lot of that does have to do with available faculty to cover those courses. But I will defer to Commissioner Kinney to sort of speak to what those flexibilities might entail. I think it is mostly around assessment reimbursement and then support for test preparation. But Commissioner Kinney.
Yes, I think that the way the language is written around the AP appropriation right now is to support tests, the expenses associated with tests. However, the idea of expanding the flexibility of that language that's currently in the budget bill is to allow for other supports to school districts for AP work. So it could be to those that are already doing AP, as well as those that want to expand that coursework. So it just allows the department a little more flexibility of how we can distribute that money. Great question.
Right, thank you. I do know that we have had the luxury with AP College Board that have waived some of the fees before for many of the exams I've taken in the history department and English department. But I know in many cases that's just kind of to the discretion of AP College Board. They're not always guaranteed. So I appreciate y'all looking out for that, because that can be a hindrance to a lot of kids to not be taking AP because they worry about that end of the year fee. So I'm glad that y'all are really considering that in the next budget proposal.
Thank you very much.
Those are great questions. I see one question in the chat about expansion of career pathways. Certainly representatives from the Office of Career and Technical Education would be able to answer this more specifically, but we know, and I'm sure you have heard as well, there is a increased need for health professionals. So I know there is an interest in expanding health science pathways, but we always know that we want to have technical opportunities that match with the industry sectors that are coming in, and it has been identified as a priority for Kentucky to be sort of the ag tech capital of the world. And so I would imagine some additional career pathways that would align with some new business ventures that'll be coming into Kentucky, so that we can be sure that our Kentucky students are prepared to enter into the workforce in those areas. But Glyptosan, that might be another presentation that the students might enjoy learning more about the career and tech pathways that we have available and those that are on the horizon, and maybe some that they would love to see added. Any other questions?
I had a question going back to the technical colleges. One thing that I noticed when I was coming back from GSP this summer was the abundance of technical colleges found here in Kentucky. And from my understanding, each technical college that has different specialties that they have depending on what the area that they are in really specializes in. So my question is, with the funds that are being allocated to these regions, would it allow for people from different counties who have certain interests and pathways that they would like to pursue to be able to go to some of these technical colleges that are further away from where they are currently located with, so that they are able to explore those areas? Or are these more about funding the technical pathways that are already in place currently?
So that's a great question. So I just want to clarify. So we have our area technology centers, which are going to be those typically housed at a high school or a separate campus. And those have those career and technical pathways that are supported by the department. We also have a very expansive career and technical college system that is more kind of that post-secondary space. And so when we're talking about the CTE programs, those are going to be for secondary students, for high school students. Some of our ETCs do have some reciprocal agreements with the districts in their area, so that might be housed at a particular school district or within their campus, but they have an agreement that they would invite other students from those kind of neighboring districts to attend. Maybe they have a welding program that the other districts can't support. And so then the students who are interested in the welding program can come to that campus. As far as the career and technical system, it's my understanding that there is open enrollment for those. And Brian Perry actually used to work for KCTCS, who I know you all are familiar with, and he can speak to. There are a lot of amazing scholarships for students to attend the KCTCS system. And so if you are interested in that, please don't hesitate to reach out to him. I know he can provide more information. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. I see a hand. Let's see. Seth.
Yeah, speaking of scholarships, will there be any further opportunities for students to apply for scholarships when the career pathways expand, more classes are added, things like that, or test taking is encouraged? Do you think we'll see any more opportunities for students to have their college paid for?
That would be amazing. Certainly, we have some workforce scholarships that we promote that are for students that successfully complete pathway. We have a lot of our programs support the sort of end of course credentialing, so that you can, in addition to all of those amazing experiences, that you have an actual certification at the conclusion of your program that you can take with you to whatever post-secondary path you want to pursue. But I think absolutely, anytime you can speak to having those hands-on experiences, that will help make you more marketable in those scholarship applications. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now that are on the horizon, but that is certainly something I'm happy to look into and provide more information. Any other questions? If you think of any, maybe you are pondering upon this presentation and something comes to mind, don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to answer any questions at any time. I think Glyptosan has a lot of notes for future presentations, so we always appreciate your active engagement and inquiry. Thanks for letting me spend some time with you this morning.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Brewer. And as for some of you, Dr. Brewer is a familiar face, as Commissioner Kenny mentioned, with her work and support for last year's student project on school safety. Thank you, Dr. Brewer, for joining us here this morning and giving an overview of the legislative priorities. And thank you, students, for your questions. If you do have questions, we invite you, as you reflect and think about the presentation, we invite you to share those in today's meeting exit slip. And I will share those with Dr. Brewer so we can circle back and answer any questions you may have. So at this point, we will now move over and talk about this year's student project. This began as a conversation in May when you all were, this council was newly announced. And at that time, Commissioner Glass helped invite and shepherd a conversation about student voice. That was an item and a topic of great interest among our group here today. And over the last few meetings, you all have been brainstorming and thinking about what is student voice, or what does it look like in your particular area, your district level, perhaps even your regional level. And then as we think more largely, what does that look like at the state level and then even at a national level? And so today's focus, and I want to make sure, if Rima, if you are on and can.
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. Okay, so just scrolling through our list. But Rima is our chair of the Student Advisory Council, and she and I will help be facilitating a conversation about where we currently are, where you as a council currently are on your project, the items that you all have been connecting and thinking about and reflecting on. And last meeting, our in-person meeting, you all broke out into two different groups with Bentley White, our vice chair of the council, and Rima leading a group, and really thought about what it is you want to do, what kind of questions you want to engage as a council, and then what you want to do in our future meetings, and what's the outcome, what is it, the goal or the objective that you would like to create. And so our idea for this meeting and conversation space, and we're just going to stay in this group. I'm going to share with you some links, but Rima is going to share a little bit more. But I think our conversation really now is a conversation of who as a council you would like to discuss, what stakeholders you would like to engage, and then the what. And this is a very specific list of questions and or talking points that you as a council are really interested in thinking about and gathering data or information on as it relates to student voice currently, and perhaps what it might look like in future contexts. So I'll let Rima share, and then I will drop in our chat a couple of working documents for us to provide time and space for you all to brainstorm and think more collectively about student voice. So Rima, if you'd like to take it away.
Yeah, and Glip just answered that perfectly. So for this upcoming year, our main goal is to kind of interview all the different stakeholders, not only students, but teachers, superintendents, principals, on their thoughts of student voice and how they see the vision of it. And we're gonna create a brief with like the definition of student voice and how they can implement it on a district level and a statewide level and maybe even a national level. So for today, we're gonna break out into two groups. You're either gonna be in the what or the who. So if you're in the group that's the what, we're going to be creating the questions that we want to ask these stakeholders. Do we want to know what they think of student voice? Maybe what they would like to see change about it, and questions around that. And then if you're in the who, you're going to be coming up with the people you want to interview. Do you want to interview other students in your school? Do you want to interview principals, the leaders of your district? There's so many different people, and the goal is to complete this within the next year. So keep that in mind when you come up with your ideas.
And Rima, due to a technical issue, we're actually going to stay as one group for today. So I would perhaps invite everyone, let us just spend a dedicated space of time right now engaging the who, and then we'll transition in about maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and we can engage the what question. So in the chat, I hope everyone has access, but in the chat, I've dropped a link. It says Who Talking About Student Voice, and you should be able to open that document. It'll open up as a Google document, and everyone should have access, and you should be able to type in directly. And this is a space, and I think I will defer to Rima to help guide this conversation. But again, as you all continue to think about the who, thinking about what does that look like at different levels? Who are the principals that you would like to engage? Who are your teachers? This is an opportunity to be very concrete and specific as you all build out a plan. So if you, I will pause now as you all are able to open up that document. If anyone has any technical issues, please let me know. But I will pause now again, and Rima, if you would like to help guide and walk the who. Who is it that you all are wanting to engage with? And we will use this document. So your next meeting, you can then move forward with next steps.
Yeah, and I just want to keep in mind that the people we're interviewing, we're not necessarily going to be interviewing them as a whole group. So we might have like 3 to 4 students assigned to the person who leads their district. So we can think about like basically anyone in mind, but we can also like go to other councils with the KDE and go to their virtual meetings and hop on and ask them questions at the end. So just like anyone you have in mind, you can either like unmute or just put it on the document.
And I think that might be helpful if you all want to share out loud some of the stakeholders that you are interested in as it relates to student voice. Is that your peers? Is that your administrators at your school? Are those community stakeholders? I think that'd be really interesting to hear, considering our wide representation of students on our council.
Rima and Sam, I would say on my perspective, I could most likely tackle students, teachers, or administrators. When it comes to business stakeholders or community stakeholders, I'm not too familiar as to who individually they may be. But I do know many that have sponsored many things at our district, whether that be, the football field, whether that be a construction site at our school when they've added on to our school, or we've done some other renovations. So that I could probably refer to our administrators in that conversation with them to then maybe build off how I could individually do that. But off the top, I'm not entirely sure. But just those 3 general groups of students, teachers, and administrators, those I probably could get an allocated time to meet with them individually when possible.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be everyone. So like maybe on the document just putting, like, I know you go to Paintsville, so you can put like teachers and administrators like from this area and like your connection to it. But honestly, just having a conversation with like one of them would be more than enough.
I think that another group of stakeholders that would be critical in like the process of interviewing, I think immediately of like the need for diverse perspectives and stuff like that. And so I looked at like the KDE Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging team, and perhaps like individuals on that board, like Dr. Sweeney, for example, could be some administrative people that we could look into interviewing to get those kind of perspectives from the diversity, equity, and inclusion side of student voice, which is important in, all levels of student voice in Kentucky education.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So you can go ahead.
I agree with Rima. I think that's a really great suggestion, and you will certainly have met with Dr. Woods-Tucker, Dr. Sweeney, and Dr. Searcy. So I think, again, this is a very tactical level conversation, thinking at your areas that you represent as a member on the council. And so this is a opportunity and dedicated time in our meeting space to brainstorm and collaborate. So thinking of stakeholders near to you, but also at the a KDE or other in the state. I also encourage you to think about maybe whose voices you're not considering, who maybe do you not have on the list. That's always a really helpful guiding question. Who is not here on our stakeholder list that you think should be?
And also, it could be helpful for the third little column for Student Advisory Council connection, if like you could put your name and maybe like your county, so we could get like an idea of the ones that you're interested in interviewing. Because our goal is to have like an accurate like geographical representation, not only just like racial and ethnic diversity.
I think some members are also members of the Kentucky Student Voice team on our council. If that's an area or an organization that might be of interest, this would be an opportunity to list that group as well on the document, or similar organizations.
Yeah, I think that's actually the perfect organization because they've been working in so many different avenues of student voice to include on this like policy brief. I can put that down.
And I think we'll give maybe about 3 to 4 more minutes to let you all brainstorm and continue to build out this list. And then Rima and Bentley, the chair and vice chair, will be able to collate and collect this information. I see a hand in the group. Please, Seth, please feel free to go forward.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe could someone give me feedback on this? What do you think about talking to future students or like younger kids? Like, I know that might be a little problematic, but I think talking to students who will be in our position one day is important.
I think we could definitely do that, especially because student voice isn't limited to high school. So, I mean, if your voice is like you don't really have a place to like talk to administration in like, I don't know, middle school or elementary school, like you're likely not going to have that place in high school. So I think we could definitely do like 1 or 2 groups with some younger kids. So you can definitely put that on the document. Another thing I wanted to bring up was, since we're with the council or part of the Kentucky Department of Education, we have access to like a lot of these resources of these people in these like higher positions. So are there any groups within KDE that you guys would want to interview? Because I know there's a superintendent's council and also like a teacher advisory council.
Rima, I could potentially get with Miss Moulton here at Paintsville. She's a part of teacher advisory, and see if she and maybe somebody also here with this meeting could get a hold and see if teacher advisory would like one of us to come on and maybe ask some questions, whatever they may be, to them. But I know she had mentioned that if there is any opportunity to kind of work together with advisory, that she would be happy to do it.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Nicholas.
All right, maybe about 30 more seconds to wrap up your thoughts. This link is accessible to you all, and I encourage you to continue to input before the next council meeting with any groups or particular stakeholders that you're interested in having this conversation with. And then we will move forward to, again, the second level of the tactical conversation, which is the what it is that specifically you as a council are interested in finding out more about related to student voice. So I will now drop in the chat. It's titled, "What? Talking about Student Voice." And again, if you have any technical issues, please let me know right away. Dr. Kinney has dropped in the chat. She has also provided, Commissioner Kinney has provided the list of the advisory groups as a helpful resource to find all of the advisory councils that you all may be interested in having this conversation with. So in the chat, you should see it's called "What? Talking about Student Voice." And I think Commissioner Kinney has provided a great tip here. She writing, "I don't think you will be able to talk to all of the groups, but a select few." And I think that as you all brainstorm a sort of master list and you continue to think through the project, thinking about your constraints on time and resources, thinking about which stakeholders you all may be effectively able to engage to find out more about the status of student voice in Kentucky. I think that's a great guiding thought.
So the next document I think Glyptis Ann put in the chat is the what. So we're planning on asking them anywhere from like 3 to 5 questions, just because we don't want to make the interview super long and lengthy, but really just getting like depth over breadth. So right now we kind of just have like a running list of questions we would like you all to add. And what we're going to do is kind of like summarize the questions that are like very repetitive and kind of create those into our final list. But if there's like any, like the different talking points you want for the stakeholders on their thoughts with student voice. So this could be like maybe their criticisms towards it, or even how they see the future of it within their like schools.
And I know you all are. Go ahead, Roma.
Oh, I was just going to say you can feel free to unmute too.
Roma, we're on the same page today. I was going to say, I know you all are diligently inputting your thoughts onto the document, but it's also feel free to say them out loud and brainstorm. This is a collaborative space, and I know we're virtual, but sometimes the feedback and sharing out is a helpful sounding board. So same page, Roma. And I can just share some, just quickly looking at the document, there's a great point here. One potential list of questions related to the point on criticism about student voice, asking what, if anything, holds you back from inputting student voice into decision making at your school or community level? Another question is a question of frequency. How often would you say in a classroom, or if you're a board member, does this stakeholder take into account student voice from all ages and demographics? Again, feel free to share your thoughts out loud with the group. India, go ahead.
So during our in-person meeting last month, I know that my group that broke off was kind of discussing how some types of students are more active, I guess you could say, when putting their student voice out there, and then other groups of students just aren't. They kind of hang in the background. So with that question of what, if anything, holds you back, it's, in my mind, it'll be able to showcase what kind of the limitations are, and where we can put more availability to let your student voice be heard, to ensure that every demographic is heard, every type of student is heard, and anything else like that.
I think that's such a great point, especially because a lot of adults in the education field feel like they are already incorporating student voice, but in reality, they're just asking like the top students in their school their thoughts on things. So I think it's important to be a lot more representative of every single student, because the most high achieving student is not your average student.
I really like this question, this guiding question. How is student voice incorporated in your school or area? And I would be really curious to find out that response. Again, that can be specific explicit examples, or there may be implicit opportunities. And I think that would be a really helpful question to see what that looks like at different levels. And by that, I mean, is this at your classroom level, at your school level, or your district level? But then also thinking about what if variation you might find across the state. Other thoughts from the group as you're wanting to think about as you break apart, as you sort of divide out and engage this question in your smaller groups as a council. What are your other thoughts or big questions, your sort of big guiding questions? What else are you all thinking?
Flip to saying, I think there are a few hands raised.
Thank you. I was reading the comments. All right, I will go in this order. I have Monis, then Jocelyn, and then Austin.
So at my county, we do both class officers and then the student council elections at the beginning of the year, and the student council members will, I'm not sure how often it is, but they'll go and meet with local school boards around us, like the Franklin County School Board. And I think one of the biggest questions I had was like, for students who actively participate in student voice like that, going and meeting with bigger school boards, how influential actually are they? Because they can go and sit in those meetings, but how much are they heard, and how much are their ideas truly incorporated, I think.
That's a good question. So it's really, you're interested, it sounds like, in this idea of what is the impact of that conversation. Jocelyn.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so at my school we have a site-based decision-making committee, and it's a way for like the parents and the teachers to get together and talk about school policy and for the parents to put their input in. So if we like interviewed, these kind of committees, we could really get the parents' point of view about what they think about student voice and how they see their student involved in it, and basically what they see from like the outside perspective looking on their school.
Great. I'm hearing parent as a stakeholder group, and I think that is a great idea, a great point. Austin.
So we have like something kind of small. It's like every time there's an issue, we always have to fill out like a form about it. And I feel like most people don't take that form really to heart as much as like administrators in our school. I kind of want them to. So I guess it's like our principal was like is trying to push a bunch of things onto us that we don't really see fit within these forms. So I guess more talking to us about what we want to see within the forms so that we can have options upon like the issues in our school and like how to solve them in a way.
So that's, I think, if I heard correctly, an opportunity to provide student feedback on, that's a specific example of an opportunity where about student feedback to your administrative staff. I have Honette and then Owen.
The thing that I put in the doc was something about reaching out to local like student body presidents, like student councils within high schools, because I know that one thing like in their role as like student body president or student council is to get student voice themselves, like as a student. And I feel like one thing that happens is they get in that role and they think that they need to be the ones making the decision, but they should be reaching out to like people in their grade and asking them questions. So basically reaching out to schools and asking how engaged and involved the student body is in making decisions within the school.
Thank you. Owen.
I feel that it is imperative to get a sample of students of varying socioeconomic and academic backgrounds in schools so that we can ask them what they feel the problem is in addressing their student voice and what they propose as a solution to their perceived limited student voice in their school. And I feel that by addressing both sides of this issue, we can gain a greater knowledge of what students are experiencing with student voice.
Thank you. The one recurring theme I'm hearing really is this nuance, and there's just multiple lenses here. You've got different individuals, but I'll share a comment from Shraman in the chat who writes, I think also student voice can be viewed via multiple lenses. For example, how comfortable are students talking about concerns with their teachers and administrators as one. Another could be how comfortable students are to voice their own opinions on new initiatives or even starting their own clubs. So again, there's nuance here about what is student voice. Again, I know we had a brainstorming session earlier on the council, and there's, I think, a general idea, but there's a lot of nuance, right, in what this means. And I think this is an opportunity to really dive in as a council for you all to think about and explore what this looks like in the state. Do I have another hand? I think Anopa.
Kind of piggybacking off of what was just put into the chat, I think that resources should be something else that we look into. I know that a lot of environments or like communities where agriculture is a big profession that a lot of the students go into, the students should have an opportunity, such as future agriculture clubs and FCCA and stuff like that give students hands-on opportunities and opportunities for them to have a voice in like some of those extracurriculars, which can help them with advanced professions and stuff like that. Would be imperative to their future and creating a more economic and helpful Kentucky.
Great point about having a role in shaping their future. Still have a couple of hands I don't want to overlook. Jocelyn, do you have another comment? And Rima, I'm seeing quite a few, several questions, more than 3 to 5, I think, for the council to consider and build forward. I think at this time, would probably like to wrap up. I think we've gained a lot of insight from council members and exploring, again, this conversation of who as a council you would like to engage and then what. And then as you all move forward, again, at a tactical level, exploring then how you can carry this conversation forward. What does this look like? Who specifically is going out and asking these questions? And then how are you collecting that information? And I think Rima has a great list of documents and information to come back at a future conversation to build on. Rima, would you like to conclude with any thoughts or ideas about where things are now?
Yeah, so this is amazing because we literally have 4 pages worth of questions. So what I think like Bentley and I are going to do is we're going to look through and see like what's repetitive, and then maybe create a list of like 10 questions from there and have you all like vote on the questions we think are the most important to ask everyone.
And thanks. Oh, I've got a comment or question from Hanette.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Will we be asking the same questions to each group, or will it like vary to who they are and what they do?
Rima, do you want to answer or me?
Honestly, we haven't really set an answer for that. Like we can adapt it because I know like the questions we ask students might be different, but I honestly think for like the purposes of a report, asking everyone the same exact questions and seeing maybe like how students and teachers interpret it differently could be really interesting.
Great point. Again, want to thank everyone. This was just dedicated space. It is virtual, so working collaboratively on online documents. But these documents, you will have access. Rima and Bentley will review and circle back, it sounds like, and share about next steps about the project. Again, as Commissioner Kinney shared in the chat, the list of available advisory groups here at KDE, there's a full list. And I think in the document, thinking about if there are a few that maybe in your time span here that maybe are the most meaningful for your project and getting the opportunity to speak with those advisory members. So thanks, Rima, and everyone for your contributions here relating to student voice. I'm going to move to the next slide. And that's where I will share. This is a dedicated time in our meeting to just share about upcoming opportunities that may be of interest to you or members of your school. Our colleagues at the Kentucky Martin Luther King Jr. State Commission have shared an upcoming series of contests that are due December 1. These are essay, poetry, and visual art, a call for essay, poetry, and visual art entries for the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. contest. The theme is Standing Stronger Together in Unity Till Victory is Won, and winners of these contests will be invited to attend the ceremony in January at the Kentucky Historical Society. And these slides and links here are available, will be available to you after the meeting if they're of interest to you or you would like to share with your classmates. The next opportunity is a call for Kentucky schools that are needed for the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow STEM competition. This is open to Kentucky public middle and high schools to this is an opportunity, as I'm reading, to think outside the box and have a more hands-on learning experience in science, technology, engineering, and math. And once you apply, your schools apply, you have a chance to take a share of $2 million worth of prizes. Martha Lane's Collins High School in Shelby County won the Kentucky State competition for this last year. And the applications are open until October 27. And again, more information on how to apply, your school can apply and compete is available on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow STEM competition website. The last opportunity is a call for enrollment to participate in the 2024 Scripps National Spelling Bee program. And elementary and middle schools in Kentucky are eligible to bring that program to your school. And there are enrollment fees that are open until January 31st of 2024. And again, more information if your school is interested on how to participate are available on the Scripps National Spelling Bee website. And now this is, I see a hand, excuse me, I'll pause. It's Tony. So I have Tony. I'll pause here for Tony Constatman, our Chief Communications Officer.
Hey guys, sorry, I'm take my dad and deal with some stuff this morning, but I just wanted to share another opportunity. I just actually hot off the presses got it in my inbox this morning, and I'll make sure that we have this information for you. High school students have been invited to register for the Young Women Lead Conference at the University of Kentucky, and it's a free event that's focused on leadership, education, development, and is hosted by the University of Kentucky College of Education's Department of STEM Education. And so I just want to make sure we get that out because I think that there might be a tight deadline on that one. So we'll get that out to you guys in an email, but I just wanted to let you know that that opportunity has also come to us, and I let them know that we would share that with you.
Like Tony said, we will follow up with those details. I did hear her say there's a tight deadline for that, but we'll share that with you all with our meeting exit slip today. And so we now come to one of sort of my favorite moments in our conversation in our Commissioner Student Advisory Council meeting, which is now just an open call for member announcements. And this is a dedicated space and time for you to share out noteworthy and important events or opportunities in your neck of the woods that are of interest for those others on the call who were coming from all across the state. So this is an open opportunity to share out events or sort of notable activities worth sharing to the group. So feel free to raise your hand or share in the chat items that might be of interest. And I see Nicholas. Nicholas, please go first.
Thank you, Calyptus Ann. If Rima, Ava, and Francis know well, KSVT has a couple of upcoming events. Tomorrow, we are having a forum in Corbin. I believe that is at the Pendleton in Corbin. Timing, you can actually look up KSVT, Kentucky Student Voice Team's website or social media pages for that information. If you can't make it in person, you can always get in contact with one of us or anybody else you may know that's a part of the group, and we can possibly get you in on a phone call or any kind of a Zoom conference or something like that. Also, we also have another forum that will be hosted in Louisville on November 18th. That will, I believe, be hosted at the Mitch McConnell Scholars building in U of L campus. So I wanted to let all of you know, so in case you needed to know for travel or anything else, that those events will be happening and we would be happy to have you along.
Thanks, Nicholas. Are there any other member announcements? And Jude has shared in the chat that there are more forums to come in different areas in case you can't make the ones that Nicholas just mentioned. Feel free to drop any announcements here on the chat. Someone mentioned they can share in the GroupMe just to have those opportunities available and known to you all. And I'll move forward to our last announcement of today. The originally scheduled November meeting for this Commissioner Student Advisory Council meeting has been canceled. So our next meeting will be virtual on Tuesday, December 12th. As Rima mentioned, she and Bentley will be working in the meantime and coming back with you all with some updates related to the information regarding the Student Council project. And so please be on the lookout for your email there. I will pause and see if there are any closing thoughts or announcements before we adjourn. It's a bit early, but the opportunity for you all to get back to the classroom. So if there are no other announcements, I just want to say thank you to Commissioner Kinney for joining us today. Again, this was her first meeting in her interim role here on the council, and we look forward to seeing you all virtually in December. Thank you, everyone.